Buckle up, a Fox News alert. The FBI now officially classifying the New Orleans attack that killed 14 people an act of terrorism.
Right, in this, as we learn more about the ISIS-inspired suspect's path toward radicalization.
Yeah, now it's a terrorist attack. Garrett Tenney is live with what we're learning. Hey, Garrett.
Yeah, good morning, y'all. That path to radicalization is a big part of what investigators are now focusing on, and we are learning new details about the suspect from his family. Shaddam Jabbar's brother tells Fox News that for years, the U.S. Army veteran had been trying to find himself and looking for something to guide him, ground him, and set him straight, which was in part what led him to join the military. The brother says the whole family grew up Muslim, but that Shamsuddin took a step away from the religion in his 20s and more recently got back into his faith after his second divorce. The FBI has released these new surveillance pictures showing Jabbar in the hours leading up to the attack, walking through the French Quarter and placing two coolers with IEDs inside that he apparently planned to detonate during the massacre. Investigators found bomb-making materials at a nearby Airbnb where the suspect was staying, and they now believe the suspect acted alone and that he did not have any accomplices.
14 innocent victims were killed in this senseless attack, and at least 35 are injured. First and foremost, let me be very clear about this point. This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act.
Yeah, back here on Bourbon Street, you can see a growing memorial here at the entrance from Canal Street. This is where Jabbar drove the truck around a police car and came through. You can also see this is a point of growing criticism of city officials for not having adequate security precautions in place. Yesterday, the city installed these barriers along the sidewalk, these heavy steel barriers, which would prevent a car from driving up onto the sidewalk just like Jabbar did. If these had been in place, it would have prevented that attack from happening. When the city's chief of police was asked, why weren't these in place Tuesday night? She said, I didn't even know we had them. City officials have said, though, that if it didn't happen here, this guy was so set on killing and creating destruction that he would have done it somewhere else. Back to y'all.
So, Garrett, they have confirmed that there were two IEDs, homemade bombs, and he set up a bomb-making facility, it looks like, in this dilapidated trailer. But having said that, they recovered them, but did they find video of him placing them there?
Yeah, the surveillance video images that the FBI released, they say that was him going around the French Quarter just in the couple of hours before he carried out the attack, placing the IEDs in coolers that he set in different locations around the French Quarter. They recovered those, they disarmed those, and they had searched the rest of the French Quarter, and they've been tracking the surveillance video of his movements to see if they missed any others. They believe they found anything that was left here and that is safe. That's why they've reopened it. But the bomb-making materials that they found at that Airbnb, that's going to be an ongoing part of this investigation because hours after that attack, a fire started at that Airbnb. So investigators are looking into how that fire started, and because it happened after he was already dead, it may have been one of the pieces of evidence that initially led them to believe that others may have been involved. They now say that was not the case.
Unbelievable. Garrett, excellent reporting down there.
Imagine how damaging that would have been with nails.
Yeah.
Not only the explosion, but the nails flying out all over this dense population. And where are they going? People are running away from the truck, probably towards the coolers.
I'm sorry, Brian, Emily. I can't get enough of them installing those things so quickly. I mean, those type of barriers are already in the city here for a good reason, because people do this, they're deranged, and they want to attack. And the fact that the leadership is saying they didn't even know they had these, that they could have installed these before, I mean, that is the stuff that is going to be under a microscope. And we can't forget, and I know we want to not go there, but I've done a lot of reporting from New Orleans because they were the murder capital, I think, about a couple years ago. The leadership there is catastrophic, and that mayor was not prepared for something like this. And I think as the coming days, the coming months, as we bury the victims here and their names are released, there's going to be more criticism on what they could have done to prevent something like this from happening.
Couple things. So as you just mentioned, this city has been absolutely addled by ridiculous corruption by those city leaders,
Yeah.
right? We've reported on them. And the fact that those residents' tax dollars did not go toward installing those bollards, when we all know that doesn't have to be a result of an ISIS threat. That could be drunk driving. That could be simple confusion. We have them on every street corner here in New York City for a reason, and it is successful. It is an abomination that they weren't deployed there beforehand. Secondly, the surveillance images that shows the terror suspect walking around at 1 and 2 installing those coolers, it also picked up people looking in the coolers, and we can't stress enough the see something, say something nature of that, including, look, let alone his videos that he posted, essentially saying he's going to do this. And third point is that he had a domestic violence record. His second wife filed a restraining order against this person for threatening great bodily injury and more. We talk about signs, we talk about history left, we talk about a wake of this horrific individual. And the point is that as he was becoming radicalized, there were tools at his disposal that led to the murder of 14 Americans and, to Brian's point, the potential maiming of hundreds more because of this individual. And that is on, in part, the current president's shoulders, because what was he talking about as the most lethal threat back in June of 2021? Oh, it's not Islamic extremism. No, it's something different.
According to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, white supremacists.
They clapped in Oklahoma. That's stunning. I don't know where they found people to clap to that. But obviously, that was a dry hole that the Secretary of Defense had to do a whole investigation on.
Yeah.
And when it came out, the Pentagon did a study, goes,
Nothing.
we don't have anything. So that was a waste of time, waste of money, and a waste of focus. Senator Tom Cotton brought that up. Look, the military's got to be looked at, but the military's got to get the right focus, and they're about to get it.
This terrorist appears to have been radicalized well after he left the Army, but it is the case that sometimes bad apples slip through the system in our military. Remember Nidal Hasan, the Fort Hood shooter from about 15 years ago. However, the Biden administration for 4 years has stuck its head in the sand to the threat of Islamic terrorism. If you recall, President Biden and the Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary of Defense have all said the biggest threat we face is from racially and ethnically motivated terrorism, specifically white supremacist terror. They launched a witch hunt in our military to try to find all these apparent white supremacists in our military, and they could barely find any at all. Most of what they found were criminal gang members. It's just another example of the misplaced priorities of this administration.
It's not just misplaced priorities. It's moronic. You're going to get people killed by focusing on stuff that don't matter.
Well, that's what Pete Hegseth's going to change.
I remember you got Jews that are being overrun on college campuses. You got the number one, according to the FBI, the number one group being targeted for racism, going after the religious beliefs, is the Jewish people. And then the White House released a statement about Islamophobia. I mean, you can't have activism and leadership positions of law enforcement. It does not keep us safe. And this is just the latest example.
Yeah, and by the way, you have a mayor there that's the definition of corruption. She's evidently having a relationship with a bodyguard who's been indicted. She's about to, according to reports, be indicted.
Yeah.
She spends a lot of her money going overseas to climate conferences while they're dramatically understaffed police force. And my goodness, you have beads from New Orleans stuck blocking your bollards from going up and down, and they told you 5 years ago to fix it. They put them in 2017. They're not working by 2019. Literally, beads got jammed in there. And that's what this guy was able to go right around the cop, right up the sidewalk. And if you go in New York City and Chicago, they responded to people when they said, if you want to stop these guys from driving up and killing pedestrians arbitrarily, you got to put these bollards in place, and they've done it. So I look forward to getting to the bottom of this, but I think you're going to find a police force that's an embarrassment and a mayor that's an abomination. That's not going to help.